That's never happened. Battery went flat. So part two. This is part two. So yeah, relationships of everything is the thrust of this ramble. Everything relates to everything, and I think that I think the importance of that is, and I'm just going to talk practically rather than the reasoning behind it, but the importance of that, you can't underestimate. If you see the relationships between things, then you see the relationship of you see everything, and then filter the relationship through your personal response. Then you kind of unlock untold possibilities. I think with that, because that's the thing is that we you want your uniqueness of what you do to be present in your work, and that uniqueness is you. It's not something that you contrive. It's not like, oh, I want to paint this so and so, like so and so style. It's not that. The uniqueness just comes from this acceptance that it is your personal response. But I don't think that can work with a controlled response. I said the comparative measurement or any other kind of constructed way. I don't think that your personal response is a component of that until, like I said earlier, until you actually start to colour the thing in. And at that point, then maybe you can introduce some of you into it, and the style can then. But I don't think it can. I think, as I said earlier, the style comes at the beginning. It becomes the style, the life, if you like. I used to say that, and I still say the same thing. But life enters the portrait the moment that you touch the canvas or the paper. It's that's when life enters it. It doesn't enter it at the end. It's at the end you're more likely to drive it out than anything else. But that's, as I said, the problem with working in a constructive way is that there is no life in the marks you make. If you're tracing, for instance, there's no life in those marks at all, is there? They're just and they are the first time that you hit the paper or hit the canvas. So it's very difficult to do that. And if you're a painter that draws first and then transfers onto the canvas, it's even more difficult. But the difference would be that if you were a painter that drew first and then transferred what you'd drawn, providing the drawing that you drew first had the life in it, then it would be still maintained when you painted it, because you've in some way embedded that emotional response into your approach. So how you feel about that subject is still there. It's not gone. So you can go ahead and paint the thing knowing that it's not just a replication, because of when you first came across this face or this subject, you had an emotional response to it, and that doesn't go away. So what I'm going to do with this now is do what I did, I suppose, on this one. I'm not going to go too far with the it's still going to float on the page, I think. I'm not going to turn this into a scene and give it any kind of context. I'm going to just define some of the components. I'm just going to make sure that edge there, for instance, is better defined, because at the moment it's not. It's this weird line that's showing there that's actually giving it an end, a definition. So that's really what whether or not I go to town on the hair or not, I don't know. I quite like the way the hair. This is why it looks a little bit like an illustration, I suppose. It's got a little bit of a 1930s kind of You see the highlights on it, but I think that there's a little bit more of a density down here. I can't suddenly start introducing things that aren't. There's an orangey feel to this underneath there, where just to give that some. You see, it doesn't need too much to do that. So I don't want to. It's one of those things where if it's not important, if this is not important, other than to give the thing a platform. So don't want to put too much detail into that. Again, that's a relationship decision. It's not a case of a technical decision. It's a relationship of these things, how they impact on each other. That is the determiner of that. Not a, oh, well, technically you need to do this. You know that thing that people do. Oh, well, technically at this point it needs to be like that, and technically it needs to be that. That's just, for me, that's just all a bit too unnecessary. And I suppose it's because it's I treat this as an emotional thing. So how I feel about something is the driver, rather than a technical decision. It's like background. If I paint the background on anything, then inevitably it's the drawing or the painting that decides on what the background should be like. It's not really a technical decision. The color relationship thing that people talk about. You should use complementary colors and all that kind of stuff. I don't know any of that. I'm not really interested in that kind of thing. I think that's probably because I've got this aversion to the knowledge being the reasoning. Liking something because I like it is more powerful than a technical known reason. Again, this is the problem with what I do, is that it kind of contradicts what everybody says, and I feel as though I'm criticizing what other people do. I'm not. I'm just saying this is how I do it. This is how I do it. Right? Not saying anything about what other people do. People find their own ways of doing it, and I'm probably talking about the comparative thing as if it's a bad thing, but it's not. If that's the way you're going to do it, then do it. All I'm saying is that from a common sense point of view, relationships just seem to, considering a relationship just seems to be the obvious thing to do, because everything's about a relationship. So why wouldn't you just do that? And but anyway, as I said, that's my way of doing things, and I'm driven to share in a way, but I just hope it doesn't come across as me poo-pooing any other methods or any other ways of doing it, because I'm not doing that. I'm just saying this is the way I found that works for me. Anyway, as I said, I'm just gonna. One of the things about the pastels is that when you get to a certain point, the culmination factor. I think it was probably yesterday's. Let me try and find yesterday's. More than most, this one. There's a sort of a culmination element to it. That there are many colours in that. That were some right and some wrong, but the culmination of the cumulative effect of the colours create another. Obviously, don't have to explain that, but they do, and you mix the mark making in such a way, and it's not unlike, say, printing, which they had a dot complex, and the way the dots move, and the three dots moved in certain ways created different colors. It's kind of like that, except we have different marks to make that can do that, and they can indicate tonal values within them, simply because the marks are closer together, or they're not, or they're denser, or whatever. And that's the thing with these oil pastels. They suddenly get to a point where you're using a culmination of all the colours, and it starts, and you can kind of steer it in a certain way, providing the pastels are pliable enough. Some of them are pliable, some of them aren't. Some of them you can use, and they're tacky. I keep them in my hand. I showed you last night. I keep all those that I've been working with. I'll keep them in my hand. In fact, I've just picked these up and they're still warm, and they'll be more tacky because I keep them in my hand. So there's tackiness about it. So because it's tacky, it puts more oil, pigment, or whatever you want to call it, on the paper, and it creates another surface, if you like, another dimension. So but that's the thing about these, and I know I'm not trying to make a photo replica, but if I want to adjust, say, the tones of things, then and it's not a detail thing like last night's, where there's just no way that I could affect the detail of things, but I want to adjust things tonally. You can do it if you don't make stupid marks like that, and you can just build it up. And let me just fix that. I don't know why I've got this strange twitch that sometimes it'll do that. I don't know what it is. It's just I think it's a hangover from the visualizing days, when you drew something. You'll see a finish marks. They used to call them something. I can't remember what they are. I don't know if I've got any on the one of these drawings. One of these. This on this charcoal drawing there, for instance, these finish marks. So you just finish off. You never just draw an outline like that. You do that. And sometimes when I'm applying things, colours or whatever, I do it by, and it's an old habit that I just got to break, I suppose. But sorry, focus went in on there. That was mad, that. So sorry, yeah. So I was just talking about relationships, or a relationship approach, as opposed to the more constructed approach, it will either work for you or it won't. It's just one. If it sits, logically with you, that you should consider the relationships of things. It's a much for me. It's a much easier way to work. You always got to get rid of the perception of expectations and perception of outcome, or perception of what a portrait is, and expectation of meeting that perception. If I can say that, sounds a bit long-winded, but that's what I'm trying to say. If you can break that, then the relationship thing will probably sit better, because you run the risk with relationships of it not being an expected outcome, a predictable outcome. I kind of like the unpredictable outcome thing. I don't want to be able to predict how it's going to work out. That's the adrenaline thing for me. But I think that's probably one of the major things you're going to have to do if you want to be more responsive and more and work more relationally. Then you're going to have to take out the idea that it's only going to be this. If it's not like this, it's not good enough. That one. You're going to have to get rid of that. And I said, try. And there are so many things that are really important, that people will focus on first. Mark making, for instance, because they are important. It is important, mark making. But the thing is that mark making is determined by the way that you approach a response. So if you're and again, this is a common sense thing. So if your outcome is detailed and and precise, then your mark making is such. It's and the tools you use are such. So if you take away the expectation of any kind, then your mark making could be whatever it wants to be, and all of a sudden we're all loose and all those things that people talk about. I want to be a much looser style. I'm going to copy so and so because he's got a looser style. They don't get it. They don't get that the style thing, the looseness thing, is just a consequence of your approach. It's not. It's not a design. It's not even a piece of equipment that determines whether or not, to some degree. I mean, you use one of these, and you're inevitably going to be loose in your style, in the way that you make the marks. But that's the thing. People will focus on things that are immensely important, but they're not. Mark making immensely important, but they're not. Because as soon as you approach it from a relational point of view, and add to it the response aspect of it as well. The relational thing is both to do with the physical aspects, but also how you feel about the relationships between the things. So it's as I said, it's quite it's a different thing. This is why people don't do it. I think it's because it's like it's if you do it properly, it's a much more complicated thing than just simply drawing the line between 2 points, and working out the division of this, that, and the other. It's much more complicated than that. So maybe that's really the reason they don't teach it. It's not and they maybe do teach it in some, but I've not come across any, apart from when Paul talked about relational drawing. I suppose there must be, because he's academic, so I mean he comes from that background, so they must talk about this sort of thing in academia, but in terms of what we see, I mean, I always see YouTube just like you do, so I don't see many people talking about drawing relationally. I see lots of people talking about bloody Loomis. Drawing a head from an angle, Loomis. My God, I think when he did that book, he didn't know the impact it would have. I'm sure. Maybe he did, but they just, the way it hit the art world, because obviously it was an illustrator, so, and that's what it was for. But the way it impacts on the art world is just, and I think that's because people just desperately want to make copies of faces. That's their only definition of portrait. So figures is realistic and precise. And if there's a way of doing that, then that's exactly what they're going to do. That's the route they're going to take. Anyway, like I say, I'm done with this, so I don't want to overwork it or wrap it on any more than that I have done. Sorry about the break in between. It was an interval. You could have got up and had a cup of tea, and then. So I'm going. That's from now on. All my videos will have an interval, just because people get sick of my voice. So they're going to have intervals in them. Right. Okay. Right. I'll love you, leave you, and I'll catch you in the next one.